Cathy Heller. Is we want to be happy, right? I mean, every conversation we have, whether we're talking about our relationship or a trip we're planning or our career, the goal at the end of that conversation is you're trying to be happier, right? You're trying to figure out how to be more fulfilled. And the reason I started this podcast, Don't Keep Your Day Job, is because I'm like obsessed with this conversation of how to help people figure out how to make a living doing what they love. Because let's be honest, when you get to make a living doing what you love, you get to do what you love. And the evidence is there, and you know this is true. You don't need me to say it, but I'm just gonna repeat it. The evidence is there that people are making a living doing what they love, whether they're screenwriters or songwriters or hat makers or fashion designers. There's thousands and thousands of people making a living doing that. So why can't you? You can. You just have to go from thinking of this as a hobby to a business, and you have to treat it like a business. And so you have to reverse engineer what's worked for other people who are killing it in your field and figure out what the strategy is. And you need to put in that commitment with the strategy. So in the class, we've been holding your hand and saying, this is the breakdown of what's proven to work. And then it's a matter of what you bring to it. You know, Javier is here, like they show up, they keep creating songs, and people get frustrated. And we had just had Greg Mendel on my podcast, and he owns a bakery in San Francisco. He's got 19 employees. He started out trying to make pastries, and his parents were like, there's no real job for you? You know, and he was like, why can't I do an honest craft? And look at him, he's in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and he's doing great. And he said something really interesting. He said, people complain about doing the work they want to do. And I said, God, that's a great sentence, because it's so true. And I've been there. I get it. It's frustrating. I recently was listening on Audible. By the way, if you want to go to Audible, you can get a free audiobook by going to audible.com/dreamjob. Get a free book, thanks to the supporters of our podcast. So there's great stuff there. But I was just listening to Angela Duckworth's book on grit. Have you guys heard this book on grit? It's amazing. She did a TED Talk on it. And I talk about this all the time, and it's worth talking about again and again. Look, even he's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's so important to talk about it because this is the quotient. This is the determining factor. They've done studies. They can measure this. The main thing that decides whether a person is going to be successful is not their IQ. It's not their talent. It's not where they come from. It's not what political party they're in. It's not, where they were born or what shoe size. It's how much grit they have, how much you're able to stick in something. And that was really the only thing I had in spades when I came to LA. I didn't go to music school, and I didn't have the experience, and I had no connections, and I didn't have any money. I was working 3 day jobs. I just had the grit. And my husband says to me, for better or worse, he doesn't love it, but he says, you have the will of a small country, right? And so, he knows when I say something, he's like bracing himself. He's like, she's gonna commit to it. I'm gonna wind up moving to Nova Scotia because that's what Cathy has planned next. I'm not moving to Nova Scotia. But like whatever I say, I sort of have that, I'm gonna figure it out. And that's the only thing that I really can rely on. I wasn't the most talented person. When I would show up in co-writes initially, I was writing very mediocre stuff, like, no, it's hard to believe. No, I'm just kidding. You can believe it. I'm not like, the most prolific songwriter. But I got better. And I kept going, and I got better, and I got better, and it took a long time. But in the scheme of things, it didn't take that long. Like, by the time I was 30, 31, I was making 6 figures a year. Now I'm 30, so I'm about to turn 38. Don't tell anyone. So it didn't really take that long. But it took probably 1 or 2 years of really focusing. And then I got myself an agent, and my first year with the agent, I got 11 placements. And I was the squeaky wheel. I was the one calling the agent to the point where he was like, all right, stop calling me. And I was saying, what else can I do? And there was no course. And he wasn't giving me themes to write on. He was just saying, like, this song is good. And I was like trying to get any crumb I could get from him. And I was doing whatever I could on my own to research what was working and then to figure out what was consistent about each show and what was consistent about each ad. And I just sort of built a curriculum for myself. I was like, well, this is what works and this is what doesn't work. And then I had to find a sound that was genuine. I had to find myself in that sound. And that took time. That took time for it to become something where people heard it. They were like, that sounds like Cathy. But Cathy's just listening to what makes sense in terms of production and lyrics. And that's what we've been talking about at Sync Keepers. And that's what we talk about in the course. And so I sort of created this for myself. And the thing that I just kept in my pocket was that persistence. And that's what I want just to continue to remind you is so important and encourage you. Because we live in a society where if you don't get something immediately, people just give up. And most people, like 99.9% of people, gave up way too soon. And they could have or would have, but they just didn't. And I don't want that for you, bless you. You know, I want every person to be able to live a life where you like it, you enjoy it. It's way too short of a ride. Like, I just went to a funeral last Monday, and my husband says to me, nobody gets out of this alive. And I was like, yeah. And like, it's like hitting me, like this like whole death, I don't enjoy this thing. But it reminds you that it is so incredible, this gift of like being here and having running water and being healthy and having the means to even know what you love. Most people don't know what they love to do. Do you know that? Did you know that's a thing?
Yes.
So there's 156,000 books on Amazon related to how do I figure out what I love to do. And you know what you love to do because you're in this room and you came on a Sunday to talk about licensing your music. So not only do you love what you know what you love, but you figured out that there is a path. You figured this out somehow through your research or through your own tenacity. You figured out that licensing music specifically was a way for you to take your music dream and turn it into dollars, right? So you've already figured out what you love to do and you've done some research to figure out the path. So now you have something that's very unique. You know what you love and you're already here. So now you just have to stick at that. You have to keep at that. And that's that muscle that you have to continue to just keep developing. And one of the best ways to do that is to put yourself in an environment with other people where they're going to help support you. So whether you join the class, or whether you're in the class, or you set up for yourself accountability partners, you know, people who are going to check in with you and what have you written and what have you done. And I am telling you, as sure as I'm standing here, that if you commit to this, you're going to figure it out because many, many, many people have. And what we found out at the last Innkeepers event, how many people were here last time? Oh, cool. So at the last Innkeepers event, we heard from 6 music supervisors. Today you're going to hear from 5. And they continue to say, we want indie artists. We want your music. In fact, several of them said, here's what I'm working on. Do you have this? Do you have that? And people started sending in music. And by the way, the Disney search has not closed yet. They're far from that. So we've been sending her all that music, and she keeps saying thank you. And we've been continuing to send music to Jen Malone. So we've been passing all that over, and that's fantastic. And Jen already placed one of the people's music in her show, so that's great. But my point is, I kept saying at the last event, do you hear what they're saying? And I kept saying, because you're going to have in your head all the naysayer voices. You're going to have all the thoughts in your head about how this is it's a pipe dream and it's not realistic and it's not practical. So I kept underlining every time somebody would say on stage, so we look for indie music, and indie music is actually preferable because it's easier to clear. I would say, did you hear that? Because I want you to continue to reinforce for yourself what's true. Because all that negativity actually isn't true. It's just an idea. But what they were actually saying and what you're going to hear today, and the reason they're coming here today, is because they value indie artists like you. They wouldn't spend their time here if they actually didn't need music from indie artists. They would say to us on the phone when we asked them to do this, well, that's not at all what we do, because we only talk to artists who are signed to major labels, and that's not what they say. What they say is fantastic. And this is actually why sync licensing has grown so much, is because indie artists found their space with Dawson's Creek initially and the OC, and then it started with Grey's Anatomy and all the ABC shows, and that started a whole theme, which is now the case. In fact, I'm now working on a Netflix show, which I wrote the theme song for, and thank you, and I went up against and that was another thing, I went up against so many big names, like if I'm signed an NDA, so I can't say, but like you'd be like, Kath, that's insane. So I didn't think I was gonna get it. The showrunner of the show is Rob Minkoff, who wrote and directed The Lion King, and Jennifer Garner is the lead, and I just really didn't think that I was going to get it. But again, I was like, we'll just do our best work and hope for the best. And we turned it in early. We had 3 weeks to turn it in. We turned it in a day later. Because again, you can't control if you're the most talented, but you can be the most grateful, professional, personable. So we turned it in early, and we were very genuine. You know, we put our heart and soul into it, me and my producers, and our stomps and claps and gang vocals were like very sincere, and the melody's good. And we've been working, we've been all honing our craft for a long time, so we got it. And then, this is what's interesting, this is the point I was making. They wanted to audition a composer. And instead of auditioning, please silence your phone, thank you so much. Instead of auditioning their traditional composer, they have a whole, a world of people that they usually go to for that. They said to us at Netflix that they're now looking at songwriters for the composer positions. as well. Because they've taken a note from advertising, they've taken a note from TV shows, and they've found that they don't want these library cues all the time. They want something that feels alive. They want something that feels like it's pulsing through your veins. It's coming from a genuine artist. It's not coming from someone who's like, you need a flute, you need an oboe, let me stick it in, you know? So we were like, all right, well, we'll try it. Have I ever composed anything? No, I haven't. So we sit down, and I was like, all right, well, what are we gonna do? So we're like, we just go in there, and with all of our life and heart and spirit, we just start making cues, and we're singing ahs and oohs, and they're like, wow, we've never heard composition like that, you know, because we're songwriters. And so they're rethinking now the whole way that they're doing things. And this is what I want you to know, and I keep saying it because you're gonna hear the other stuff in your head all the time, so I need to fill you up with what's actually happening in my world, okay? So I'm gonna continue to reinforce this, but so they're like, oh, that's amazing. And what I'm telling you is, and I've said it before, the opportunities for people to license their music, it's infinite. Everywhere there is video or film or TV or trailer, any kind of media, there's a song underneath it. And when you come along and you're easy to work with and you know how to clear a song and you write stuff that works for picture, you're unique. Now here's the thing, and Sonic can agree with me because we go through this every day. I just did the CD Baby podcast a second time. Kevin Byrne is great. He had me on. I'm going to speak. If you're not going to be there, you should come to Nashville. I'll be speaking there at the DIY CD Baby conference. And he said we're talking to each other, and he works with so many artists, you know. And when I was on the podcast the first time, we had 320,000 unique listens to that, and I got thousands of emails. And every person did the exact same thing with the exception of 2 people. Every person sent me their music, and it was, even if it was good, it wasn't good for sync. So at best, some of it was mediocre, and a couple of things that were good, where there was like a good vocal, or there was something going on, I would then write back and say, this is cool, here's what we need, da-da-da. I heard back the second time around from 2 people out of close to 11,000 emails, okay? And those 2 people, one of them joined the class, and one of them I never heard from again, and that other person was even better than the other person. Okay, so this is where this is great, okay? This is why I have a career. Because a lot of people, like I said, they just stop, they give up. The inside self, that quotient inside, that emotional strength is not there. That is what's missing. So if you're here and you're getting this shot of dopamine, do something about it. Like if you're inspired and then you do nothing, that's terrible. Don't wait to be inspired again. Do something. Sign up to be in the chorus and put yourself in that group of people. If you're in the chorus, get the most out of it. Connect with as many people as you can. People are so kind and so encouraging. Do the co-writes even though they're uncomfortable. And if we tell you, if you've sent music to us and you've like sort of asked to be signed by Catch the Moon, and either you haven't heard or you've heard something that's given you direction, it means it's not there yet. But instead of being defeated by that, know that we listen to everything. Sometimes the reason we don't get back is because we're not jumping up and down about it, and it's hard to keep saying to somebody, it's not quite there. But there have been people in the class whose music we've signed, whose music we're pitching actively. So it does happen, but it does take a little bit of time. Why should we expect that the thing that we want to make $300,000 a year doing that we absolutely love, that's very competitive, should happen the first 6 months we're at it? And if it doesn't, it's not meant to be, we're not meant to do it, and it's not going to happen. I mean, is that ridiculous? Yeah. It's totally ridiculous. I mean, every single thing in my life has been the fight. It's been the fight, you know? I mean, I interviewed someone recently on the podcast, and I was like, this is so uninteresting, because he had like a silver spoon in his mouth his whole life. I was like, all right, well, there's gonna be those people that like luck into it, right? I didn't have that. My parents broke up when I was a kid. I've been working 3 jobs since I'm 14. Just remember saving up to buy that TV that had the VCR in it, because I could like drown out my mom's like depression in the other room. And my parents, you know, they were not around at all to be supportive, and if they were around, it was difficult. And I moved out here with a big dream and a lot of persistence, and here we are. So today you're going to hear from 5 music supervisors who are literally sitting at the edge of the world that you want to be in. They have the power to make things happen, but the thing you're going to notice, and I hope again that you reframe this for yourself, They are all so approachable and kind. What I loved about licensing when I started, and I still love it, but the thing that really got me into it is that every time I would meet a music supervisor, they were so easy to love. And there's other parts of the business, and people will say to you, oh, the music business is just the worst. It's even harder than like the Hollywood actor business. And I guess that's true. I mean, I had the label thing, and it is not as beautiful as you think it's going to be when you get there. But the music supervisors are real fans of music. They love indie artists, and they want to help you. So today, I want you to sort of wake up your ears and your heart and zip off all that negativity and just put it next to you. You can pick it up when you leave if you want it. But I challenge you to open your mind to this optimistic truth, which is actually true. The last thing I'll say as I wrap this up is Angela Duckworth in her book Grit, she says that, and again, you can get it for free if you go to audible.com/dreamjob. She says there's a couple ways to cultivate optimism, which is the thing that they found that correlates with grit. Not surprising, right? So if you can develop optimism, your grit is going to increase. So she said people with optimism, they'll see the odds, and there might be a 90% chance something won't work and a 10% chance it will, and all they see is that 10%. They're like, remember that line in Dumb and Dumber when he asks her out? And he's like, so you're telling me there's a chance? So you need to be like him, okay? So today, I want you to listen for any cue where you're like, there's an opening, it's possible. And I want you to write it down. And then I want you to take action and make sure that you get yourself in a habit of writing music. And when you get down, because we all will, you're going to remember what I'm saying, and you're going to do something about it and get into action so that you stop being in your head. Is that a deal?
Yeah.
Great. So if you want to join the course, what we did is if you join the course in the next 24 hours and you put in the code SYNCKEEPERS, you can get in the course for a discount, and it's a nice discount. And that's the same thing if you want to come to the next event like this that we're going to have. You can put in SYNCKEEPERS and you'll get a discount. We are also doing, the last thing I'll tell you, is we're doing a boot camp. In a few months, we're going to let you know the details soon. We're working with a hotel, we're getting rooms. We're only going to have 16 people, and the Highfields are going to come, and you're going to leave this boot camp with a song produced and done. So you're going to meet with supervisors privately. You're going to have 2 days with us, and by the end, you're going to have a song. So for the cost that you would pay to go produce a song anyway, you're going to meet with supervisors, get a song done with our input, and working for a real pitch that's coming in, and you'll leave with something in hand. So we're super excited about it. More details to come. So without further ado, let's call up our three panelists. Sonic, come on up. Everybody here wants to know what's inside your head, what you guys look for, what you ate for dinner yesterday. I'm just kidding. But we want to give them some concrete, as much as we can, what you look for, what kind of music you're placing, and whatever is a guide for them as they continue to work towards pleasing you and sending you flowers and things like that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Lionsgate and how you choose music.
So I'm Samantha Hilscher, and I work in the TV music group at Lionsgate. I started off in the music legal group about a year ago and then switched over to TV music, which is I'm deeply passionate about. I love television, and I think that it's the best opportunity for music. Starting out watching the OC and One Tree Hill as a kid,
right?
You know, you hear like those end credit songs. And well, now we have Shazam, but back in the day, I'd be like, I would always try to remember lyrics and then Google them after as a kid.
So you're very humble, but Lionsgate produces a lot of the shows that you guys watch. You want to tell them some of the stuff on your slate?
Yeah, so we have Orange is the New Black, Nashville.
Heard of it.
We have a show on Hulu, Casual, a show on E! Called The Royals, a show coming out on Netflix I'm excited about. It's called Dear White People, and it's going to be in April. We have so many shows.
So Lionsgate, so what they do then is they assign music supervisors to each of these shows, and then they also work with the music supervisors to help feed them music. So now I'll shut up and you can talk about
Yeah, it's a really cool relationship being on the studio side because we kind of hover over and see, we supervise all aspects of it. So we'll hire the composers, hire the music supervisors, hire the music editors. So we're not necessarily looking for music every day for specific episodes, but we have great relationships with our music supervisors where if something's sent to us, that we really like, we'll send it to every supervisor for our show that we think fits. And it's a fun relationship with the supervisors because we're either working, some for Dear White People, it was a relatively new music supervisor and she didn't really know a lot on the licensing side, so we were really happy to jump in there and help her out with the specifics of licensing because it gets very complicated and convoluted. And that was really fun because we were looking for all indie music. I mean, the budget was very, very low.
Right, and this is where you get in because you please people by being able to say, yeah, we'll work for, sometimes it's $500 in an indie budget, but then they remember you when they have a budget of $6,000 for a cue, or when they wind up working on a film and they can give you $15,000, or they're working in an ad because music supervisors, a lot of them are freelance. Go ahead. Sorry.
For some shows, it's crazy. When you look at a budget for a whole TV production, I mean, it's pages and pages long, and it's pretty crazy how much it takes to make a TV show. But a lot of times, the first thing that they want to cut the budget for is music. It just always happens. We'll always overshoot a licensing. We'll say we need this much, knowing that they're going to break it down a little bit. But most of the time, a lot of times we'll put more money into an ad credit song that we really want something like big and to pop. And sometimes it ends up being, dealing with a major label, or we're trying to get like a Future song or Run the Jewels or something. But a lot of times too, if it's a smaller artist and it really makes an impact and we hear it and we're like, oh, we really like this. There's nothing saying that we need to have a big major label song.
That's a line to write down. That was one of those lines. Write that down.
But a lot of times for the majority of an episode, it's a lot of smaller cues, and we don't have a big budget in most of our shows. So most of the time it is smaller artists, or sometimes we try and get bigger artists and whittle down the price. But that's very difficult. And it really depends too on our shows, what kind of music we're looking for. I mean, for casual, our showrunner really likes quirky, different music. He doesn't want to hear something that's on the radio. He doesn't want to hear a song that everyone else knows. He wants something different. So we've had, some more like acoustic songs. Then we'll have like funkadelic at the end, just random. It kind of runs the gamut. And a lot of times too, it's really up to the showrunner and their taste, which can be all over the place.
Right.
And like for Dear White People, we had 17 source cues in a 30-minute episode.
Oh God, that's so much.
So there is opportunity for music. I mean, we have around 17 shows, and it needs to be filled like wall to wall.
Right.
And we have a few shows coming up that we don't know if we want a composer for, just because they're a half-hour comedy, and it's not necessarily necessary, and we don't know what the budget's going to be like, and we're still figuring that out.
Right.
But if we end up not going with a composer, it's going to be source.
Yep.
And it's going to have to be inexpensive source because we're not going to have a crazy licensing budget.
But this is why, at Catch the Moon, we focus, like our pie in the sky is advertising, and we do a lot of advertising, thank goodness. But we do more TV than anything because there's so much more demand. If you have 17 songs in an episode, and over the series, let's say you have 22 episodes in a season, cut against every single network and all the different shows, so there's a lot of opportunity for music and TV. But again, because there's so many cues, you might only get $3,000 if your song is in a certain show, because they have to spread that budget amongst the whole season, where there could be like hundreds of cues by the end of the season, whereas an ad, there's that one song, so they can give you $60,000 for that song, which they do. But TV is a great place to have sort of an anchor. I mean, for us, TV is the sort of the mainstay, because it keeps coming, and it's nice to have like a consistent place to get exposure and to be on these shows that have like sort of a cool factor, because ads don't always have that, depending on which ad it is. So tell us about what you were doing, Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I work at Disney Pixar. Kind of different from Lionsgate. I'm in animation, so I do everything, all the features, all the shorts, a couple TV specials here and there. Animation is a lot different than TV.
Yeah.
We start a movie and we work on it for 6 years. Frozen took, God, I want to say like 10 years off and on.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, because I have 3 little kids under 5. I can't imagine how that's like spent.
Yeah, well, it was a completely different movie to begin with. It was The Snow Queen. And it was different songwriters, and then it got scrapped, and then it came back.
God, I want to be in that and hear all that. That's cool.
So we're a little bit different than TV, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Disney Pixar. It's kind of use the same composers over and over again. Once you're in, they like you. Like Randy Newman, obviously, 20 years. Thomas Newman, all the Newmans. and we don't have as many song moments, but we're getting there. I would say more on the Pixar side, like I just licensed something from APM Music.
Mhm.
So like there's little moments they'll throw in, they'll be like, oh, by the way, we need a source cue here. And then
APM
I'll
is
go,
in
yeah.
this, is
Oh,
in
it's a
your
giant.
wheelhouse, but they have indie artists and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I always go to APM.
She always goes there. Alex Dixon told me that too.
Yeah.
Because you can search, right? It makes it fast. And
They have a
easy.
really good search
Yeah.
engine.
Mhm.
It's a music library.
Right.
What's the
But
name of it?
APM. Yeah.
It's a music library. It's a little bit different than Catch the Moon because you can. Libraries tend to, the music is less expensive, whereas Catch the Moon is more like a boutique. Like these are artists; they're not in a library, But by the way, we will help you with those fees. We'll match them. But it's a little bit different. But it's a great thing to be in. You sort of could diversify your portfolio. You could have some music in a library and also some music with a more boutique licensing agency. Anyways, so Pixar, heard of it. So what are you working on right now?
Cars 3 and Coco, which is our, I always say this wrong, Dia de los Muertos. Am I saying it right?
You said it right to me.
Okay,
I don't know what
perfect.
it is. So.
It's sort of our love letter to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Good timing.
Yeah, I know. Great timing.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that. And then for Disney, we've got Wreck-It Ralph 2, Frozen 2,
Oh my god, I can't wait.
Moana, which is never going to die, apparently. Still working on Moana. And then we have a film called Gigantic, which is loosely based on Jack and the Beanstalk. And then we have a Frozen short. Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff.
So cool.
Yeah, a lot of songs.
Yeah.
So how does that work then, your day to day? If you're working more with composers and you're pulling in songs once in a while, what does your day to day look like on the music side?
Can I fuss?
Yeah.
I like to say I just handle everybody's shit. That's my job. So I have to, book the scoring stages, my editors, my engineers. I don't know if any of you are singers as well. I do like the SAG, all my SAG singers. We have to do everything SAG or AFTRA.
Yeah.
Pixar doesn't, but Disney does. It's strange.
You can be grandfathered into SAG though. So if,
It's
if you're not
very
in
easy
SAG,
to get into SAG.
you
Yeah.
can still get your SAG fees. And then after a few times, they'll make you join. But it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
They'll include you in that family.
Yeah, lots of times we'll have people who aren't in SAG, and I Taft-Hartley them.
Right.
That's what it's
Yeah.
called. It's super easy. So that's what I do. I just kind of wrangle everybody, and then I do a lot of research. For example, for Frozen, I would get these crazy requests, like I need a Scandinavian lute, but that also sounds kind of hip hop, like just crazy requests. So I have to dig very
So how do
deep.
you find it?
Dig very deep into music libraries until we find something, and then we eventually base what the score cue is on that.
On that.
It kind of builds up. Again, it takes like 6 years to make an animated movie, so there's a lot of temp music in there before it's done.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you one of the people that's like going back and forth saying, oh, it's not quite there yet to the composers, or there's a group of you kind of giving that, or they are just like, what I give you is...
No,
Right.
directors, producers, and my boss. They're the ones that are like, it's not quite right.
Right.
And of course, John Lasseter has final approval on everything.
Yeah.
Everything. He's head of Pixar.
Right. So
And
you've
he
got,
has his
like-
hand in everything. If he doesn't like it, if he thinks the guitar doesn't sound quite right, it gets scrapped and redone.
Completely. That's a lot that you manage on
Yeah.
all those shows. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. And but it's a slow process.
Right,
Yeah.
which is so different. And so also with ads, like when we work in the ad world, it's like, can you send me a folder by the end of the day in 3 hours?
Yeah.
And you have 3 years,
Yeah.
6 years. So that is a big difference, which is like there's so much opportunity on all ends.
Right.
It's like it's not just have it right now. You have time to cultivate your craft and really hone in and really take the time. Because I feel like everybody wants that immediately, like I need this, and there's so much opportunity on both sides.
I want to ask you something else, and then we'll open it up. So I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. One is just sort of how did you come to this? Why did you want to be a music supervisor, each of you?
Well, I grew up dancing my whole life very intensely, and I always thought that was it for me. I was going to be a dancer. That's all I could do. And I got to age 17 and started realizing that I need insurance, and I need to know that I could pay my rent, and I also can't be reliant on my body for my career. It's just a pressure that is too much for me. So I started thinking, what can I do? I don't really want to sit behind a desk, and music and dance is my life. So I realized, oh wait, well if I had to sit behind the desk, I guess I could do it for music. and it's really the only thing I could imagine doing besides dancing. So I went to Emerson College in Boston. It's a marketing communications school. Yeah, I love Emerson. It's the best. Because I figured marketing, I figured if I was going to work in music, that's something you could learn. But I wanted a major that things could go wrong in life, and I want to make sure that I'm covered. So I figured marketing was a good background to have. And I was really fortunate. Emerson has a program that you move out to LA your last semester of school. And yeah, we have a whole program here, and you internship. And I got an internship at RCA Records in their touring and artist development department. And I was there for my last semester of school. So by maybe like April, March, I just started applying to everything I could imagine. And I went on like the UTA job list and worked for Kid Rock's manager. So I got that job before I graduated. So I got the job,
cool.
Went home to graduate, came back, and then worked for Kid Rock's manager for a year. And then I liked the label side and I liked the management side, but it wasn't quite fitting. And then it kind of just clicked for me one day, like, hey, I'm in LA, why don't I do music to service film and television, which is what I love too. Why didn't I think of this earlier?
Smart.
And then I applied to like every studio just online, and I got Lionsgate just from sending in my resume online. I had no connections. I have no connections ever yet, and I got just fortunate. And I really do believe though that if you really work hard and you're a good person, it comes back around.
Yeah.
I truly believe what you put out, you get back in.
And Russell's one of the coolest people.
So cool. I've had the best bosses. I mean, my boss Russell Zeker is like, just his career is incredible.
Yeah.
And he's so supportive. He just wants us to learn. And I still have so much learning to do. I mean, I'm 24. I'm very lucky that I'm in the position I am now. But I have a lot to learn, and he just wants me to learn it every day. He'll try to give me more responsibility. So I'm so fortunate. I couldn't really ask for more.
What was your story, Ashley?
I think it started with Grease 2, which is one of my favorite movies, and I still stand by it. I think it's superior to Grease. Yeah, I really do. I think it started with like Grease 2 and maybe Xanadu. When I started realizing how much I loved music.
Yeah, those
in
are
films.
huge soundtracks.
And I was like, oh, who does these soundtracks? Who does this? But I originally thought I wanted to be a director or an editor. And I moved to New York. And I went on just my first interview in New York. I lived with like 6 people in Brooklyn above Fulton Square, like, what you have to do in New York. And I went on one interview for this station called CTN, College Television Network. I think it's MTVU now. And I got the job as the receptionist. And I noticed there was a girl who was like actually programming the station. And I was like, I want her job. I want to do that. I want to put the videos up. So I finagled my way in there. And then I went to Virgin Records, and then I moved out here, went to Capitol Records, worked in publicity, but I was like, I don't really want to do this. I want to do the music supervision. So then I took a job over at Entertainment Tonight as a music supervisor. Exactly. And that was really weird. So I heard about the opportunity at Disney, and I've been there a decade now.
Wow.
That's how it started. I've been there 10 years.
Amazing. It's been like their best 10 years.
Obviously.
No, it's like Pixar. Come on.
That was me. No. But it did come full circle when I was with a choir, and I looked at someone's name. I was like, oh my God, you were on the Grease 2 soundtrack. I recognized her. I was like, I saw your name on my album.
Crazy. That's
Yeah.
a really dedicated fan.
And I love Grease 2.
Okay, I'm going to ask you each one more question, and then you guys are going to have a chance to ask questions. So my last question for both of you. What's your advice to somebody who wants to get their music in TV?
Just being persistent and not stopping.
I said that. Same. No, I'm just kidding. Being persistent. What else?
Just being genuine too and passionate. Like you could tell, I know a lot of our industry now is through email, so it's a little hard when you're not meeting face to face. But you could really tell, even just by an email, when someone is so genuine and really wants their stuff. And it's also, it isn't just the formatting too of an email sometimes. I mean, we get so many emails and so many music submissions, as you can imagine. And when something is concise and to the point and the link is clear and there's nothing wrong with it, that like really makes a difference.
Samantha, you need to be teaching my class. Yeah, I mean, this is like the thing. I'm, doing this podcast now, and so listeners of the podcast are emailing me, how do you get through? And I'm like, I think knowing how to email is a really good skill, and being personable and having a link, not an attachment, and like knowing how to be short and sweet, and not just like give someone a laundry list of your life. And then when they click on the link, it's got to be great. But if you can like be personable and a little out of the box and short and sweet, I think you actually get a little bit. They might actually read it. We get so many emails.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just so rude because you can tell they put no thought into it. It's like somebody will say, oh my God, this week, 2 different times, this happens all the time, but this week, I get like 8 Dropbox, like when you share 8 Dropbox shares from someone I don't even know. And as if I'm just being like, oh yeah, I don't know you. Let me just listen to all your music with no email attached to it. Of course, I have extra time for that. And many people do that. Or they'll send me an email. Like they can tell it's like a form letter. And we don't have a MailChimp. Like we email you guys. I'm emailing you, like just you. And I think we've stuck by that.
Yeah,
because
we'll
it's
continue to.
Yeah,
because it keeps the relationships real. Like you're continuing a conversation every time you email them.
Our story of Catch the Moon was we want to be able to serve and solve problems and be different. We want to be personable and grateful, and it's worked. What's your advice?
Well, technically at Disney, I'm not allowed to accept unsolicited material.
Right.
Technically. My advice, I hope this doesn't go against what y'all just said, but it was to get an agent.
No, but the same
If
difference.
you wanna- if you
Because you
wanna
get an
make
agent
Disney
and then you
Pixar, yeah.
get an agent who does that. But to get an agent, you still have to do the same thing. You
Yeah.
have to be sending persistent, sweet emails that are same.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to try to meet people in person. I'd say I get like so many emails, but if someone's like, do you want to get coffee? Or I have this new songwriter, can I bring them in for coffee? Something like that.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to do that.
That's really great advice. 'Cause
I
I
know.
think that's where people are afraid because they feel like, oh, they're so busy, they don't know what you're in the middle of. But to say like, ask me a coffee.
We have
like,
a Starbucks on the lot. That's all.
Do you see what I was saying earlier? And I mean, any of you who's been to these before already knows this, but this is why I went into music licensing full bore and completely committed to it, because when I was chasing a label deal originally, and I would get meetings, I just didn't feel like there was the same sort of love and openness and support. They're really impressed with themselves. And they all like wear red shoes and like their hat is like to the side, and like I felt like I was like at that table in the lunchroom where I like don't really belong and I'm trying to be cool and I'm like, this is not gonna be. And then lo and behold, I realized that music supervisors have allowed artists like me to make a really good living, and you don't even know me. That's the thing, like no one's heard of me and I can make a living, so that's cool.